What if everything you see, hear, and feel right now is actually just a tiny, microscopic fraction of what's actually out there? Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a truly massive hypothesis about multidimensional reality and the absolute limits of our perception. We're going to explore a comprehensive framework that attempts to bridge hardcore neuroscience, information theory, and high-level metaphysics, all to explain exactly how we experience the universe. So let's dive right into this mind-bending concept, because it completely flips our traditional understanding of the brain entirely on its head. For the longest time, the standard scientific model has just assumed that matter generates consciousness. You put enough neurons together in the right specific pattern, and poof, awareness just magically happens. But this framework, it asks the exact opposite. What if consciousness is already everywhere, and your brain is actually just a high-tech filter designed to block most of it out? It's literally like an overzealous spam folder for reality itself. The unified map of this framework is incredibly dense. It connects granular neurobiology on one side with staggering metaphysical concepts on the other. We're talking about a system that maps out everything from the peripheral nerves in your physical body all the way to the theoretical highest dimensions of existence. Our goal today is to break down this architecture piece by piece, to really understand how our biology dictates our reality and what actually happens when we chemically alter that biology. All right, part one, our reality as a filter. To really wrap our heads around this, we first need to look at our hardware, what the source calls our neural body geometry. Our perception isn't just happening inside our heads. It's a spectrum of infinite, multidimensional possibilities that gets filtered through a highly specific biological organism. These interconnected systems, your brain and spinal cord, your sensory organs, your autonomic nervous system, right down to your skeleton and your bioelectrical fields, they all interact to form your baseline geometry. And this geometry securely limits what you actually perceive. Because our eyes can only see certain wavelengths of light, and our ears can only hear very specific frequencies of sound, our reality is inherently boxed in by our physical form. The absolute crucial point here is that our organism acts exactly like a radio tuned to just a single station. We are experiencing a highly filtered slice of something so much larger. Basically, you're tuned into human survival FM while completely ignoring the rest of the dial. There's an infinite broadcast of information happening all around us, literally all the time. But our biological radio is built to block out those multidimensional signals just so we can successfully navigate and, well, survive in this specific three-dimensional environment. Which brings us to part two, the multidimensional information field. Okay, so if we're just the radio receiver, what exactly is the infinite broadcast that we're tuning into? In this framework, that broadcast is defined as omniversal consciousness, which is represented by the Greek letter omega. Think of it as a massive, coherent, symbiotic informational field where all possible multidimensional realities exist simultaneously. Dimensions here aren't isolated places you travel to in a spaceship. They're interconnected through informational resonance. A one-dimensional organism experiences a 1D slice of this field. We humans experience a 3D slice. This implies that, theoretically, higher dimensional beings would experience a totally different, vastly more expansive band of this exact same reality. Moving on to part three, psychedelics and tuning the brain. This naturally leads us to a super fascinating question. If our brains are radios permanently locked to one station, how do we actually turn the dial? While molecules like DMT act as chemical catalysts, they don't just make you see things, they physically alter your brain's geometry. By activating specific 5-HT2A receptors in the cortex, they increase cortical excitability, basically ramping up your brain's baseline energy. They alter thalamocortical gating, which is kind of like bribing the bouncer at the club of your mind to suddenly let all the sensory information in at once. And they enhance entropy, meaning your brain states become far less predictable and way more complex. You are temporarily rewiring your internal radio at a structural level. The shift in information flow between a normal state and a psychedelic state is wild. Normally, your brain is highly modular. It's like rigid office cubicles keeping your self-model totally stable and isolating different networks. But under DMT, those cubicle walls completely drop. Information flows globally and gets distributed across the entire brain. Different regions that literally never talk to each other suddenly start communicating. The rigid networks become completely flexible, and that default self-model just dissolves. By dissolving that rigid sense of self, the psychedelic molecule acts as what the framework calls a symbiotic informational mediator. Put simply, it's a temporary bridge. It establishes a connection with that broader, multidimensional information field we talked about. It essentially widens your internal radio's bandwidth so more of the omniversal field can pass right through. You aren't just receiving the 3D human broadcast anymore. Your perception expands, becoming way more vivid, complex, and often transcendent because you're relaying information from a much wider band of reality. Let's look at part 4, the math of expanded consciousness. Now, I know it's super easy for all of this to sound like pure philosophy, but this framework actually anchors these ideas in mathematics. This equation elegantly states that our experienced conscious reality, represented by R, is a direct mathematical function of several interacting variables. It relies on our neural geometry, our body geometry, the information flowing through us, our environment, our integrated information capacity, and finally, omega, the broader omniversal field itself. Our standard everyday baseline reality is simply the standard sum of these exact variables. So, what happens when we throw a catalyst into the mix? When the brain's neural geometry changes under psychedelics, when those networks become globally distributed rather than locally segregated, the variables in the equation actually shift. If your neural geometry changes, your interaction with the omniversal field, omega, increases. And, mathematically, your resulting conscious reality becomes fundamentally different and infinitely more expansive. The output changes precisely because the biological input mechanism has been completely rewired. Finally, part 5, the ultimate big picture. Let's put this all together and see what this spectrum of expanded reality actually looks like in practice as we step up the staircase of consciousness. As our biological filter alters, our access to the informational field scales up. We start down at level 1, the normal waking state, totally locked into stable 3D reality. Then we shift gears into level 2, the dreaming state, where network patterns alter slightly. Through deep meditation, we can reach level 3, experiencing expanded awareness. Stepping up to level 4, the psychedelic state, we dissolve the ego entirely and gain high-dimensional information access. And finally, at level 5, the mystical or non-dual state, the filter is essentially completely open, theoretically resulting in total unity with omniversal consciousness. Now, to be totally clear, this model is a unifying hypothesis. It's not yet proven science. But man, we are looking at some staggering implications here. It suggests consciousness isn't just some accidental byproduct of matter. It's the very foundation of the universe. It frames psychedelics not just as hallucinogens, but as literal, practical tools for exploring the architecture of reality. It posits that all biological organisms are simply information filters, and that infinite realities exist all around us, right now, simultaneously. There's a brilliant thought from the source material that really hits the nail on the head. The map is not the territory, but a better map expands the journey. A map is never going to fully capture the rich, lived experience of reality itself. But by modeling how our biology interacts with the absolute deepest mysteries of existence, we gain entirely new, better ways to investigate our own minds and our universe. So, I'm going to leave you with a massive question to chew on today. If your brain is indeed just a filter, what incredible realities are broadcasting right now, just inches outside the bandwidth of your biological radio? What are you currently tuning out? Really think about that as you go about navigating your 3D world today. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning the nature of your reality.